Hey guys, so I made a mistake on the first video, so here's your second video. Reviewing number line with fractional tenths and hundredths, and then identifying and ordering the decimal fractional tenths and hundredths using the number line. So if we're looking at this number line here, the first one, okay, if we're just gonna say the fractions, this is 0, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and then 1 whole. 1 whole could also be written as 10/10 because that whole entire fraction of the whole is being used. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write these as decimal tenths. Okay, so this is 0.1 0 decimal 2 tenths, 0.3 tenths, 0.4 tenths, 0.5 tenths, 0.6 tenths, 0.7 tenths, 0.8 tenths, 0.9 tenths. Okay, and then it would be written as a decimal 1, decimal 0, and that's the whole. All right, now if I'm going to change this to hundredths, and this is where I made my mistake on the first one, and this is actually one of the most common mistakes that people do, is if I'm changing 1/10 and I want it to be hundredths, I put the 0 down here, but I also need to put the 0 here, or I change the place value of that number. If I had just written 100 and left this as that, it would change that place value so that the 1 moves to the hundredths place. So it would become a different number, which we don't want. Okay, and that's what I did. So learn from my mistakes, because everybody makes them. So this is hundredths at the bottom, so I have to add that 0, so it's 10 hundredths, and then it's 0.10 on the top. And this would be 20 hundredths with the 0 added on the top. This would be 30 hundredths. This would be 40 hundredths, 50 hundredths, 60 hundredths, 70 hundredths, 80 hundredths, 90 hundredths. Okay, and I could add this here, and it's 1.00. Okay. All right, moving along. So I have some points here. I have X, Y, and Z. Okay, and on these points, I'm going to write them as fractions. Okay, so using what we know, this is the tenths place. So this fraction would be 2 tenths. This fraction here would be 7 tenths. And Z, or X, would be 9 tenths. Okay. Now, when I'm going to put this number here on, I'm going to change colors here. We're going to put this number here on to the number line, okay, 18 hundredths. So that would be like having 0.18. But we're going to put the fraction on. So I have, I look for that 0.1. And I know that it's going to be in between these two here somewhere. And I look, and then there is the center. So I know that would be 0.15 there in the center. And I know I would be closer to the 0.2. And this is where B would go. Okay. Now putting 2 tenths on there, I find 2 tenths. And that would be C is right here. There's 2 tenths. D, I have 0.3, and I look up here and I find 0.3, and whoops, and I put D up there. Okay. Now I want you to think to yourself, if you've seen this video before, I was thinking about this a little bit when I was rewatching. I want you to try to put these on right now as a decimal, as a fraction. So 6 tenths, try to put that on there as a fraction, put this one on there, and put this one on there, and just pause the video. Okay, so when I'm looking at 6 tenths, I know that that goes right here. 6 tenths is right there. This is 6/10. Okay, so this is also 0.6. And I'm looking at 0.09. And I know that it is below 0.1 just by a little bit, and it's really close. And so this would be 0.09 right here. And then I'm looking at 57 hundredths. And I know that 57 hundredths is 0.57. Okay, and so that I would find 0.5, find the halfway, and then I go 0.57. Now, I want you to think to yourself, was it easier to put decimals or fractions on the number line? Because for me, I would take the fractions, I would change them to decimals because I find it much easier to put the decimals on the number line, but you might be different. So now I'm going to compare these. So just pause the video again and write them in order from least to greatest. Okay, so welcome back. I am now writing my numbers in order from least to greatest. So I have 0.09 is less than 57 hundredths, which is less than 6/10. Now I'm going to go to the next row here. If I was going to write these as fractions, because I wanted to put them up as fractions, I could do that very easily. Okay, and I have 20/100. Or this one can be written as 2/10 because that is a 0 placeholder. I'm going to go, this one here is less, I'm going to use green, is less than 1.1 and is less than 0.9. So I would have to put it on this side, 0.8. Then I have 0.11, so I find the 1. And then I know that the other one would be really close there, so 0.11. And then I have 0.20, which is right here. And then I can write them in order. 0.08 is less than 0.11, which is less than 0.20. Okay, so give the questions on the sheet a try. And if you do find any mistakes that I've made, please do bring them to my attention. Thank you.